Hello, folks. We are moving to argumentation, and what you are looking at on the screen is a planning document that you will somewhat closely use when you tackle your argument prompt next Monday. I was going to have you do this Friday, but I'd like to be able to practice a little bit more with you on Friday, so it will be Monday. This planning document has up at the top just what is the task? What does the prompt present to you as a debatable issue? And in AP language, they are rarely controversial. They are typically abstract and philosophical, and thus more students are able to respond with evidence. So in this box, after you get the prompt, this is where you would put, okay, what is my task? And it says the prompt asks me to take a position on what or about what, whether something, or to the extent. And this latter phrase, to the extent, is more often used with the more recent AP language argument prompts. If you remember, those of you that took the Crucible quiz in class and didn't take the makeup, one of the prompts quoted a philosopher from the 1800s. His name was H.L. Mencken. And the quote said, "Man would rather be free than safe." And then after that, you were to argue to what extent history presents that as truth. So, not always, to what extent you would have to argue that. You would put the actual task right here, and I suggest you paraphrase it. When you paraphrase it, you're more likely to understand it. And then down here in this box, parameters. Parameters means the fence line. Where do you have to stay in boundary-wise? So in regards to the H.L. Mencken one, it asks you specifically to look at history. So that is going to be when they ask you to look at historical precedents, they're going to ask typically anything that's 50 years prior. And that's why I ask you to look at Crucible and McCarthyism. Now, the parameters for that would be just history. That's really the only parameter you have, and the to what extent, because you have to create for the reader what boundaries you are going to be saying man would rather be free than safe in history. So you have to create the context for your stance also. And then this third area right here is just preliminary pre-writing. This is where you start broadening your complexity of the prompt. What would 2 or 3 differing positions be on this prompt? A lot of kids will just come up with 2 positions. It's really helpful to come up with a third one, but time is a factor, so I do understand that. I do give you 3 spots right here, should you be able to just run with the prompt, but at least 2, and they should be differing positions. And then this next area, you should recognize these. These are your impact arenas that I have you expound upon in your pocket folders in relations to current events. I've called them here lenses, and it's just how you view this issue. They're the same things. Notice you have little circles at the bottom. Once you have considered somewhat of the complexity of your prompt, you will want to check mark 2, maybe 3 impact arenas, of which I'm calling lenses here. You want to check mark that these are the major areas this position should be viewed. And that's why they are here in open boxes. If you scroll down, now you have this much broader chart. And it is from here, you have to have evidence to support your claims. Your claims support your position. So you have this overarching position, and then you have these claims. Another word for claims could be reason. That's why you have counterclaims in there also. When you start supporting those claims, you have to have evidence. And this evidence, you possess so much evidence. If you're thinking you do not, you're not giving yourself a fair chance here, or even a justified, realistic chance. You have had freshman courses, sophomore courses. You've been learning information in your junior courses. You've visited museums. You have tackled experiences, like maybe you deal with diabetes. Maybe you have been a virtual student last year and you've experienced that. You have learned about theories in perhaps AP Psychology or IB World Religions. You have read books on your own of literary merit. You know so much more than you're giving yourself credit. You just have to calm yourself to pull from those mental files. So I use this acronym called CHORE because it will feel like a chore pulling this evidence, but it also has some guidance to remind you what is out there. So what you would do is you would just briefly, sketch out your position again right here in this row where it says one position. And then what is the lens, or at least two lenses that support that position? And under those lenses, under each lens, what contemporary evidence is there out there of the position you're taking? So let's go back to the freedom versus safety historically. And your position was that historically, yes, man would rather be safe than free, the average man. And I ask you to look specifically at Crucible. Now, Crucible is under the reading. It is of literary merit. So you might put right here, as far as the lens, let's see. I would put societies and systems. So down here, I might put SSS for societies and systems and securities. And then under this, I would talk about the Puritan faith and how people practiced this faith because it kept them safe from Native American fears, from starvation. So they would rather choose safety over freedom, freedom being maybe expressions in another religious avenue. So you could talk about that, but you could also, under Crucible, talk about with the Salem witch trials, still under reading, but now we've actually jumped to historical precedents. You could talk about the Salem witch trials, that people died, that some people ratted out other people who weren't even witches just because they wanted to be safe. It wasn't about freedom. And you could talk in here also about the people who didn't fall prey to that temptation. They chose to be hanged, like John Proctor, like Rebecca Nurse. We're going back to readings here. You could talk about those are not the norm. The majority of the crowd wanted to be safe, and so they threw other people under the bus. And that's an expression I'm using. You wouldn't want to put that in your writing. So that would be both a reading, Crucible, but also a historical. And then what you could do for here is you could talk about McCarthyism and the Cold War and this fear about safety over freedom. You could also talk about, you could say health concerns. That could be another lens under this freedom versus safety. And here you could talk about vaccine mandates and how President Biden is requiring them, how businesses are requiring them. Even in your Northwest Arkansas, Tyson and J.B. Hunt and Walmart are requiring them, and that promotes safety over freedom. So you could talk about that is where we are contemporarily, but remember the parameter is historically, for at least for the Crucible, it was historically. If we broadened the prompt to contemporary, then you could talk about vaccine mandates here. And this would be under health concerns, or even under the societies and systems, because you've got businesses who would be your authority in that situation, or maybe under science. So what I'm sharing with you is knowing the impact arenas is going to make your position and your claims and your evidence more complex. And that's what the reader is looking for, your AP reader. But even within those impact arenas, you have to have evidence to support your position. So this is the overview of the document. Now I'm going to pull up a prompt that you are going to be working with your peers today. I'm going to pause this video. Not pause it, I'm going to stop it and upload another one.